Hi, I'm Rob, and today I'm at the Crown Inn in Fareham. The Crown Inn was built in 1841. It was once a brewery, one of many in Fareham. Now it was and still is the nearest pub to the market in Fareham. Well, that comprises today, whether it's a market day or not, I don't know, of one meat wagon. Anyway, this statue you see here, or this sculpture rather, this is to commemorate Henry Court. Now Henry Court was a Lancastrian, but he set up an iron foundry in Funtley, which is part of the borough of Fareham. Unfortunately, that iron foundry was funded by his friend Adam Jellicoe, but Mr. Jellicoe actually raised the money from the Navy Pay Office. So poor old Henry Court, he was disgraced and it ruined him. But he's still remembered for the revolutionary process of rolling and puddling of iron, which revolutionised the iron making business. Anyway, there's lots of statues like this, so I'll film them as we go by. So this one's actually called the Horn of Plenty, and it commemorates Henry Court, the 18th century ironmaster. Start the walk heading west along West Street. And this is the Westbury Manor Museum. So the Fareham you see today, it started off as a Saxon hill settlement. The borough of Fareham, it covers Titchfield and Funtley and Fareham itself. And Funtley of course had the ironworks of Henry Court. Titchfield of course was famous for strawberries. But there was also leather tanning as part of the town's industries as well. So it's a goodly spread of different industries and allowed Fareham to thrive through the Georgian period. Although a lot of the buildings now are sort of 60s and 70s, which detract a little bit from the original beauty of the town, but it's still a decent place to have a walk around. Anyway, we're going to have a look at Holy Trinity Church now. Holy Trinity was built in 1835, and it's of white brick, and it's of the Gothic Revival style. It was actually built for the poorer people of the parish because there was an older medieval church further down in Fareham called St Peter and St Paul, and the pews could be reserved, so it was mainly the rich that worshipped there, leaving the poor with nowhere to worship. So they decided that they would build Holy Trinity. The money was endowed by Lady Jane Thompson, and she was the wife of Admiral. In 1992, the spire on the church was removed as it was unsafe. We have a very interesting stained glass window here, and we're inside the Holy Trinity, and I've got the Rev Greg Baker with me that will tell us a little bit more about the window. Hello Greg, so what's the history behind the window then?
The history, as far as I know, it's very symbolic to me. Particularly if you look at St. Barbara. St. Barbara is holding the symbols of priesthood, the Bible and the chalice, and for a woman to be holding those in a time when priests were only male, that was potentially quite a subversive statement being made. And actually, for this congregation here at Holy Trinity, that Holy Trinity was had 3 women who were ordained in the first cohort of women in 1994, and so almost the ordaining of women in 1994 and including those 3 women is symbolic of perhaps what this church has always been about, being a bit progressive, being looking forward, moving forward, and
of course very inclusive.
Yes.
Thank you, Greg, that's marvellous. So if you remember the steeple I said that used to be on top of the church until the 90s, well, the top of it has been saved, the very, very point of it, and there it is. It's a very nice church, very friendly church. And still retaining some of the pews as well, which is lovely. Back out onto West Street to continue our walk. Wendy and Greg were absolutely brilliant in there. Wendy's the curate and Greg was the vicar. Lovely, lovely church. When we get to Aldi, we're going to turn left and keep to the left of the car park. And from the Aldi car park, we continue to take the pedestrian tunnel under the road and under the railway. And that's the Western Main Line. And that area is called the Gillies. Very popular allotment gardens over there. Of course, allotments became very, very popular during the war as land was given over to growing food. It's a hobby that persists today. Big waiting lists for a lot of allotments all over the place. Anyway, we carry straight on and through the arch. Now, the line we've just crossed under, it's the remnants of the old Bishopstoke to Gosport branch line. Tempting to have a look, but there is a fence. The line was opened by London and South Western region in 1841. Later it was extended into the Royal Clarence Yard in Gosport, so Queen Victoria could board the boat to take her across to Osborne House with Prince Albert. It was closed to passengers in June 1953 and goods in January 1969. But the northern section, which is this section here, that carried on until 1991 because it was used for taking Royal Naval armaments to their armaments depot at Bednam. Since 2012, the lower part has been the South East Hampshire Bus Rapid Transit Scheme. Basically what they've done is they've concreted the old railway tracks and run buses on it. Of course, the Bishopstoke to Gosport branch line had several lines off it. It had the Western Main Line, it had the Meon Valley Line, it had the Bishop's Waltham branch line. Also, further south from here, it had lines out to Leon Solent and Stokes Bay. Shame really that some of these lines didn't exist, particularly with the traffic these days. But we carry on down the track towards this tall spire you can see in the distance. We emerge out onto Redlands Lane. We're going to turn left into Redlands Lane. But just a quick look at St John the Evangelist Church. St John's opened in 1963. And I know 60s architecture is very controversial, but I happen to love it. I think it's such bold design. And it's made of Gloucester and Purbeck stone and brick. And the apse is built in the shape of an upturned boat to reflect Fareham's maritime past. As I say, I think it's a wonderful building. It replaces several old evangelist churches in Portsmouth. I think it's wonderful. No, it isn't open unfortunately, but look at those lovely lines there, lovely windows. We carry on down the lane, past the recreation ground. And of course that's Cam's Alders recreation ground, which is the home of Fareham FC. Now we're going to walk under another railway bridge, which goes underneath the Bishopstoke to Gosport branch line. As you can see, completely overgrown the line that goes north of here from this point over the bridge. But it seems in the future they're going to do another phase which takes you to Fareham railway station, just like the old trains did. And there we are, that's the route of the old line. Anyway, we go under the bridge, the road bends round to the right. Well, there is a path down from the bus rapid transit there, and we follow the road along past Solent House, and we pass Redlands Primary School, and over on the right there are some new flats. I'll tell you a little bit more about those in a moment. So these flats are fairly new. I think they were built in the noughties. The site was originally the dairy distribution centre for Tom Parker Dairies. Now those of you in the Fareham area will remember the Tom Parker Dairies milk deliveries. Well, they ceased, and then the site was taken over to the production of liquid egg, mainly for companies like McDonald's. And then the site was sold and flats built, as I say, I think in the noughties. Although recently, a few years ago, Tom Parker Dairies have re-established themselves, and I believe they're somewhere out the other side of Fareham, more into the countryside. Now we're turning right to go along the front of the flats, which was once a dairy. The flats are actually a care home called Parker Meadows. So we're crossing over to follow the road left under the up and over. After crossing the road, we're going to continue along Salterns Lane. At the bottom of Salterns Lane there's a little industrial park and a path that leads off into the bushes, and that's where we're going. This is very much a dry footwalk, but had some heavy rain last night, and this bit has got a little bit of mud on there. But it's not too bad. Manageable in trainers, you don't mind getting dirty. Then we come out of this path and we follow the path behind the bushes to the right. And you follow on through the trees, just skirting the housing estate. And there's Porchester Castle in the distance. We've emerged out into this little inlet. Now don't shoot me down if I'm wrong. This isn't something I've researched, but it's something I think I remember. In that there was a coal-fired power station at one time up this creek, and the coal barges used to use the creek to refuel the power station. As I say, that's knowledge that I've sort of got in my head from somewhere. Someone wants to put me right, then put me right. Equally, if someone wants to say, yes, that's right, Rob, then I'd very much appreciate it, because sometimes you've got these things in your head and you don't know where they're from, and you're not quite sure whether they're true or not. So a bit of clarification would be good. Anyway, we're turning left here to walk along Fareham Creek. So lots of boats moored along Fareham Creek. In fact, it was a very, very well-known area for boat building throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. They made sailing boats, small cabin cruisers, and fast naval rescue ships. Then you got the odd wreck along the creek. Nice kids play park if you've brought them. And there's the famous Fareham landmark of the big viaduct that takes the West Coastway line across Fareham Creek. They're on quite a rapidly falling tide now, so that's not the place you'd want to get caught really in a boat, because it dries out quite considerably. Anyway, I've successfully negotiated the muddy bits and my shoes are barely muddy at all, so it is pretty much a dry foot walk. But we're going to follow this path in between the houses onto the Lower Quay. This was once the Fareham steam mill. It used to mill flour. It closed in 1960 and since then it's been converted to flats. In the 16th century the quay was used mainly for shipbuilding with the proximity of the Royal Naval Base at Portsmouth. And during the 17th and 18th centuries there was also a hospital here using the buildings around. Prisoners were held in hulks in the harbour itself, and the conditions are pretty grim, to be honest with you. So a lot of the prisoners of war were brought up here with all sorts of terrible conditions. The hulk is basically an old ship that's seen better days, that they're just housed on in the middle of the harbour. The lucky ones, I suppose, were housed in Porchester Castle. Indeed, there were 9,000 prisoners of war housed in those hulks at one time. In fact, Napoleonic Hospital was in the rope-walk cottages we passed earlier. Now we leave the quay behind and we're going to take the path along the noisy main road, under the viaduct and back into the town centre. If you can't wait for a drink, there's the castle in the air just there. You used to see a dredger tied up here at high tide. I believe it was called the John Radford. But again, it's from memory, so I could be wrong. But it looks like they've stopped using that quay. It looks very, very derelict to me. Again, I could be wrong. Yeah, I was right. Very much looks deserted now. And we've got the usual morons of being spraying their ridiculous graffiti. Now there's a nice little green area up there if you want a picnic, but we're going back to the pub. So under the railway viaduct and over the crossing and along in front of Tesco, so we'll straight back up past the Iron Masters pub to West Street. And we turn left. Back to the pub. So I'm competing a little bit with the butcher. He's got a microphone. Not fair. But anyway, that's a nice town walk. If you enjoy a nice town walk, some interest and some history, and you like boats, then you'll like this one. It's about 4 miles, so it's not too far. But now I'm going to go into the pub and have a cup of coffee to warm up. If you like the walk, then please like and subscribe. And maybe I'll see you on the next one. But now it's time for the pub.
Give me shut you, will you know?
That's a lovely pub inside. I can't take too much film, so it's full of customers. But I'm going to have a cup of coffee anyway. Like all Wetherspoons, lots of lovely pictures around the pub. All local luminaries. from the Audi car park.
Make sure you give our good side.
Carry on.